Welcome to the Good Karma Sport Fishing Podcast. I'm your host, Captain Ryan Van Fleet.
And welcome to the Good Karma Success Coach Podcast. I am your host, Melinda Van Fleet. Well, this is podcast number 4 together. I just went through Stitcher to see what we've done because I need a little memory check.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And time goes by so fast that,
Crazy how time goes by.
yeah, goodness gracious. And I was looking, and July 6th, at least for my podcast, we talked about our lessons learned. It was Ryan's 50th podcast episode, and we'd been here 10 years, actually this fall. So that was that. And then in September, we talked about social media challenges, which, I'm sure everyone has to deal with. And then in October, we went fishing together, which we haven't done since then.
Like I said, fishing together is very rare.
So that was...
I like to stay out all day.
I know, and I can't do that. Plus, you're always working, so jeez. So I thought it would be a good idea for us to talk about together our mindset and kind of what we do in terms of making habits and practices. And that's just been really crucial to us building both of our businesses, mine in sales and now in coaching and consulting, and Ryan's in fishing, because it really amazes me. I have to really scratch my head sometimes that, some of his clients just think that, the fish just jump in the boat or that it's easy, or they're going to learn something right away and they don't have to, practice it and remember and recognize and do all those things, because you kind of have to.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. A lot, more than what I even like to talk about. So my job is to make it look super easy to people out on the water, super easy. But in order to do that, it takes a lot of dedication and a lot of time. So that means I don't sleep much. To be honest with you guys, I don't sleep much.
When you're in charter season.
When I'm in charter season.
When you got back-to-backs, like we're going into right now, because literally you're booked every day in December except for Christmas.
Right. And so I have a full schedule through like the first 2 weeks in January.
Yeah.
So literally I'll start my day at 2 a.m. because when I get back from a charter, I clean the boat, we get everything done. By the time I get back home, I'm wiped out, I'm exhausted, mentally spent, and I don't have time to do much rigging because, number one, you got to be alert when you rig, and that's when mistakes can happen. So I've just figured over the course of the years that I'm best in the morning, and I'm basically I can work on very little sleep. So,
but the habits that you've built around this are when you come home.
Right.
Describe to people so they know.
Yeah.
Because the key here, what we're trying to get across, is using our stories as an example, so then you can look at your life and your day and your habits and practices and go, I need to reevaluate how I'm spending my time and how can I make some better habits and practices.
Right, so the priority are my clients. So when I get phone calls out on the water during the day, I do not accept phone calls because I feel that's rude. So I make that known to the clients that I don't do any work while I'm out on the boat. I don't take any calls or any text messages unless it's very important.
An emergency.
An emergency. So by the time I get home, we get all the stuff unloaded. I take my gear to and from the boat every day. I take, on an average, I take 20 to 30 rods and reels a day, including chum and so forth. So, and that goes on the boat and comes back off the boat because of the theft at the possibilities at the marina. So all that stuff's got to come home. It's got to get washed. And it's got to everything gets stored inside. And then from there, I have to start getting on the phone and returning phone calls. And I've got to do all this before 8 o'clock. And It just,
and then you pass out.
and then I'm done. I can't, like, I have no, like, I'm literally a zombie.
Because if you go fishing often, or even like me, I go fishing like once in a while for the day, you're out in the water all day. It's literally exhausting. It kicks your butt. The sea air and the sun and the waves, it can really be exhausting.
Yeah, it's not like I'm grabbing 4 fishing rods and some artificials and taking clients.
Right, and just standing somewhere.
Yeah, and it's just different with the charters that I run. For example, a typical wahoo fishing trip, my day starts at 1:30 to 2 a.m. because I'm still old school. I still rig ballyhoo. I rig double rigs, which takes a little while. When I say double rig, 2-hook ballyhoo rigs. And what I do with those ballyhoo rigs is a little different. So, to make them run the way that they do. So that takes a little extra time. And then from there, you got to dig into all the rods, all the reels, and everything's got to be mint. It has to be perfect. So, what I mean by that, the day before, all the top shots get stripped off, all the leaders get stripped off, and everything gets redone before a charter. So by the time I get all this stuff done, I've got to get out the door, and I have to leave. The boat leaves on a wahoo trip between 5:30 and 6 a.m. So I've got to get to the boat. I have to get everything on the boat, Seakeeper powered up, and be ready for clients who arrive, typically 15 to 20 minutes before we depart.
So the amount of organization and prep that goes into a typical day in our household is above and beyond. Like I truly sometimes am amazed all the stuff we get done. And that's another factor too. Some people just live in chaos, or they're unorganized, or they don't have a to-do list. Take a hard look. Do you have a to-do list? If you run your small business, I would hope that you have different things that you do every day to maximize your business, to run your business, to grow your business, to service your clients. But you know what? Some people just don't. And it's kind of amazing as I work with people. I'm like, no, you really have to take some time and think about things and get organized.
Yes, it's very important. It's even like, I can't even begin to explain it. And historically, it's taken years to get to this point to where I am organized. It was to be very well disciplined.
Yeah, and how much prep work you've done in the past week just to get ready for this, the charter schedule that you have coming up, where it's like back to back, back to back, back to back. So
yeah, it's when you're, for example, 3 days. When you're going to run 3 days, you got to make sure that you're ready for 3 days. Mm-hmm. Ready for 3 days, and it's not like, like I said, I just don't grab 2 blocks of chum and I just grab rods and we go fishing and rig out on the water. That's just not how it works with me. So everything needs to move smooth and efficiently to make the most out of my client's time. Mm-hmm. And you got to account for a certain fish not biting, so you have to have backup rods ready. No matter if you don't want to bring the backup rods, if you don't bring them, that's going to be the day you're going to need them.
Yeah.
So.
And something I talked about actually in my Crush It in Sales podcast this week, episode number 5, if you've checked out that podcast, pretty much all of us, it's actually amazing when you think about it, pretty much all of us are in sales in some way, shape, or form for the most part. So if you want to check out that podcast, go for it. I would appreciate it. And I'd love to hear from you because it's new. But where I'm going with this is in that podcast, I talk about time batching. And it's something I've always done. And it's just another really crucial, super important skill to develop if you don't already do that. So we look at our calendar and we're like, okay, this is a day that we have this. This is an hour that's set aside to run the errands and go to the bait and tackle shop and get all this done. And Ryan is highly organized in all of that. And if I need to help out, I do the same. And I'm also highly organized in getting all of that done. So time batching is something to think about. And if you want more information on that or just to have a conversation, I'm more than happy to chat with you about time batching.
Yeah, time batching is crazy important. I've got a good coach. So I tend to like, if I'm not, let's just put it like this, things suffer on my end if I don't batch my time. So I have to be very well organized. If I don't batch it at night, it's going to have to get batched somewhere along the line to get ready, because if you don't do it, things happen. So not for the better, I can tell you that much.
Yeah. So, Captain Ryan, what's on your goal list? Tell us something that's on your goal list for 2020, because we're just a little more than a month away, and that is crazy.
2020. I don't know. I gotta learn how to fly these kites, really.
The kites have been on the list on the goal vision board for
I'm like the ultimate
3 years.
I'm a meat guy, man, and I like to put the baits out and catch the fish. And sometimes that kite fishing thing, I'm still like, you know. And I know a lot of guys out there like that. Too hard. But now with the Rodan trolling motor, I can take my hands off the wheels, and if the conditions are right, we'll get into that January. But until grouper season closes, man, I'm gonna be focused on groupers and muttons and and wahoo, and there's still gonna be some good dolphin fishing. So January, February, we'll start playing around with the kites, because grouper season's closed and the season starts getting a little, once it gets cold, things change.
So those kites that are in my hallway.
Yes. With
our hallway.
With
his beautiful custom kite bag.
Badass, man.
Oh, if you all knew all the toys
man,
and
I got lots of
things
toys.
that we've tried over the years, you'd be like,
The kite bag kicks ass.
It is very nice. They did a great job on your kite bag. I will say that. So
I can fit like 4 kites in this thing, and I can put them together, and it's waterproof umbrella. I had a guy make it up for me. It's all so nice, and
it's very pretty.
It's very pretty.
It's not as pretty as my pink Yeti on your boat, though.
Yes. I get a lot of crap about that pink Yeti, but you know what? Since I put that pink Yeti on that boat with that mermaid sticker, we've caught a lot more fish. So that pink Yeti's mine.
Yeah, so. And does anyone complain after they see all the fish you catch and you tell them that it's because of the pink Yeti?
That's the first thing some guy gets on the boat. It's like, oh, you got a pink Yeti. I was like, oh, wait till you see what you catch.
You won't be saying that.
You won't be saying that anymore. You'll be wanting one of those pink Yetis.
And I'm going to share this fun fact that I learned, and I've shared it with a couple people. So if you've already heard it and you listen to the podcast, then I apologize for the repeat. But pink was actually a color for men because pink is a power color. So before the 1960s, pink was actually a boy's color, and pale blue was a color for women, for girls. And then I can't remember the president, but there was a president and his wife wore pink to the inauguration. I'm pretty sure I got my story right here. And it kind of changed the tide, and pink became a girl's color. There you go. A fun fact.
On the fiction show, you can learn a little bit about colors.
You can learn about colors and fashion on the Good Karma Sport Fishing Podcast.
Help me.
So anyhow, and if anyone's curious about my big goal for 2020 is I'm really working on being a better writer. That's my goal, is to get better at writing, get better at writing content, and quite frankly, that's just a time factor. So I'm going to go back to my own advice of time batching, in that you really have to, our dogs are crying in the background.
I know.
That's kind of crazy. So I have to personally schedule in more time batching to be a better writer.
All right, so Mel just solved the dog problem.
Sorry about that, everyone.
We're
leaving it in, so you hear about our 3 little dogs.
You want to hear about the other craziness. When you talk about discipline, that includes making sure those pups are well taken care of.
3 little Shih Tzus.
They are 3 little Shih Tzus, and love them to death, and they are crazy. So, well, I hope you all gain some value from this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving weekend, and happy holidays. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you guys. I really appreciate you guys listening, and what I really am starting to see is some guys that's sharing on their Instagram, trying out the tips that I'm giving out, and they're having some great success, especially with wahoo fishing. So on Monday, Brook Christ Outdoors on YouTube will release her video of the wahoo fishing trip that we had. So she caught a couple nice wahoo that were not shown on the land shark fishing video on his YouTube channel. But make sure you tune in to Brook Christ Outdoors YouTube channel on Monday, and also give her a follow on Instagram, Brookie Christ on Instagram.
Awesome. So thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. When Ryan said thanks for the shout outs when you guys use his tips, that really makes his day. So as someone who's here with Ryan and knows what kind of crazy days he has, when you guys give him a shout out, just like same with me, but when you guys use his tips for fishing and share with him, he really appreciates that. So thank you to everyone for listening.
Yes, thank you guys. So we're out. Have a good Thanksgiving. And remember, anytime you're fishing, it's all good.